Shabbat Shalom here from Adat Yeshua Masonic Synagogue in Norwich. It's a real pleasure having you with us, listening once more. And this is the blog for Shabbat now. And it's our portion, Devarim. We're opening up into a new book. And as always, we're looking at the overview of what this book is all about. It's an interesting one in as much as it is the repetition, the overview really for Moshe in everything that's going on. And what we learn from this is, I think, is Moshe's perspective on this journey that Israel is on as we're heading towards the promised land. Yisrael, it's ours, it's been given to us and we're about to take it. And it's this process of the journey and what we learn from it. This is what Moshe really wants us to get our heads around and why he repeats the Torah for us, this Mishneh Torah for us through Devarim, because it's so important that we do. Now, if you've got some kind of teaching background, you'll understand really where I'm coming from when I say this, that there are basically two ways that you learn. You can sit down with a book and you can learn and you can study and you can read, and that's great and wonderful. It's going to give you a whole wealth of knowledge and understanding about things. That we would probably call learning. But that isn't the only way that we learn. There's another way which teachers and educators know is called acquisition. You acquire knowledge. And that isn't something that you're just going to take a book off the shelf like this behind me and just open it up and think, oh, I'm going to acquire. Acquisition is something different. Acquisition is what we do, for instance, when we're learning a language. No child of 1 or 2 years old sits down with a dictionary and starts learning words, and yet by the time they're 3 or 4, most children are fairly fluent in their mother tongue, and they haven't had a formal day's education of actual learning in that language in their lives, but they have acquired it, and they've acquired it by contact, by osmosis of absorption. And by trial and error, getting it right, getting it wrong, parents and carers correcting them, and so on and so forth. And these two really are the two ways that we learn our lessons through life and walking with the Lord as we go through, because ultimately they're the same thing. If we are walking with the Lord, He will build into our lives all the lessons that we need to learn from. And I think the difference that comes out is quite stark when you think, for instance, someone comes at you and says, my hamster died. And wouldn't it be rather sad if at that point I go, oh, you know what? I've got a great book about that. Let me just go and get it for you, and you can borrow it for the weekend and read all about it. Now that person's going to be thinking, great, thank you. That's just what I need to hear. What they really need to hear at that point is for you to sit down and go, oh, I know. I feel so sad for you. I understand. That really hurts, doesn't it? And why do they know that? Because you've been through it, you've acquired that knowledge yourself, that pain of the experience, and are now able to share it with someone else. Actually, acquisitional learning of the Lord in that way is far more powerful than anything else. You know, I love the books that we've got of testimonies of Masonic rabbis and others in the movement and other believers in the past. I love their books, their testimonies of what God has done in their lives. That's fantastic. But, you know, ultimately that isn't going to build my faith to the level that really it needs to be. How do we get to that point? We need to have that living testimony in our lives too. We need to be those living letters, as Shaul talks about, of the Lord writing into our lives real experiences. Yes, the pain, but the joy too. All of this, making it real in our lives, that we become those living testimonies. That not only builds our own faith when we see the Lord come through, but it will also build the faith of others. And you know, ultimately, that is the only way that we are really meant to know God. We can give books to people about knowing God, but that isn't going to take them through to that point. The only way you can really know God is to step out in faith, reach out for His hand and take it and say, Lord, I want to walk with you. I want to spend my time with you. Be real in my life. And that's when He'll become real to you. You know, Jeremiah says he wished that everyone would know the Lord. That's what we need to know. That no more will man say to one another and say, know the Lord, but all of us will know Him. That we won't have to reach for commentaries or texts in that way, that we'll have a living relationship with God. And then we will know Him. We'll have acquired that knowledge as we go through. Acquisition is what we need. Libraries are great, commentaries are good, but ultimately we have to, by the osmosis of His presence in our lives, acquire that deep and transformative knowledge of who He is. And then we will change. And this, I think, really ultimately is what Moshe wants to do in Devarim. He has learnt so much from his early times when he murdered someone and fled Egypt and spent all those years, hidden years in the desert. Apparently, think, well, what did he do for 40 years? There's no mention of what he was doing. And it's in those quiet years that he was really learning from the Lord and really changing, and God was changing him. Embrace what God is doing in your life. I know it hurts. If you've really walked with God, there is pain. But embrace it. Lay hold of it. Learn from it. Acquisitional knowledge of who God is through those times, because then you'll be a powerful testimony to the living God of Israel. Toda rabah, להתראות. I'll see you next week and have a wonderful Shabbat. The Lord bless you. Bye-bye.